Everybody. I hope everybody can hear me. It's kind of strange out there to stare at empty walls, but if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. So happy Thanksgiving after, and I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving dinner. And Sarah, if you'll do roll call.
Chairman Blair.
Here.
Member Orr.
Here.
And the record will reflect that Member Sishka is excused from the meeting.
Okay, this is a regular subcommittee meeting for Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. It is, let the record reflect, we're a little behind because of Zoom and all the crazy technology we have to do. It is 9:45 a.m. and we're all at undisclosed locations. So I'm in here with a cigar and whiskey. So we're going to move right to the approval of the November 3rd, 2020 meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the November 3rd, 2020 minutes.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 2-0.
Okay. We kind of have a condensed brief. We don't have any water requests, I don't believe. I think, who's here from staff?
So we have Public Works staff, we have Leslie and Carrie and Craig and Gwen are all in the Zoom.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, you guys.
Does that look like Carrie?
Oh, hey, I see you now. You still look the same as I saw you last time. So let's go right into topic B, which is the infrastructure topic. It's pumping versus recharge, January to October 2020 update.
Good morning, members. This is Leslie Grazer speaking. I too hope you had a nice holiday, and we're rolling right into our next one pretty quick here, as well as the end of the year. I'll just read the item summary quickly to you, just for the record, that this is a standing item for the subcommittee agenda. Updates on the city's pumping of water supplies and the recharge thereof will be provided each month as provisional. In July 2020, the subcommittee received pumping versus recharge for the last 5 years. So we were looking at trends, and then we put that one aside for a while. At this and future meetings, updates will be provided for year to date, with this meeting's information being January through October. At your last meeting in October, the subcommittee, we had a request come in, I believe for a second time, that there was interest in seeing the two recharge supply types, surface water and treated effluent, separately. This change to the graph or the chart was approved by the chairman and is shown in this month's graph. Do we have any of this available, Sarah, online here? Or are we going to stick with the City of Prescott logo?
If you'd like.
It might be good to have the chart if you're able to move to that piece of the agenda.
By the way, Leslie,
Matt.
I am very, very pleased that we've restructured that graph. It looks very well done, and it gives you a better feeling of what the recharge efforts are.
Well, good. Yeah, what goes around comes around. I think we used to present it that way, and then it was moved to a different format, and now we're back to where we used to be.
Well,
so it's
sometimes we shouldn't always mess with the best, right?
Well, change is just part of life, right?
There you go.
Okay, I'll let Sarah taking the time to see if we can post that up. And if not, I'll continue in a minute or two. It's a no-go. But what I will provide right now is that the memo also speaks to the total pumped from January to October is 6,534 acre feet. And the total delivery of recharge waters from January to October is 4,909 and change. Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for helping us out. So looking at this chart, which is in your packet now on the screen, you can see there's a dark blue bar, and that kind of rides behind the other bars. That's the pumping. And so you can see we're following pretty much a typical pumping pattern through the year. If you look next at the bars that are stacked on top of each other, those are the recharge deliveries. So the green is the treated effluent, and the light blue is the surface water. So if you look at January and February, you can see that there's only effluent supplies that are moving to the recharge facility. You generally only see effluent supplies also moving in March, because the city's recharge window for surface water actually starts in April, unless we have conditions that are outlined in a stipulated judgment that we have, and we won't go into that today. But those conditions were available this year. So you can see in March, there was initial surface water supplies moving ahead of the typical window. If we look at as of today, or actually as of yesterday, our recharge window closed. So if we look towards the tail end of the graph, on October, you can see there's pumping that's being shown, and there's effluent recharge deliveries. There weren't any surface water deliveries because the conservation pools have been reached on both reservoirs. And then as of yesterday, if we look at a November chart, it will not have surface water being moved either. In December, the window it's closed by November 30th. So that's the brief rundown on this chart. I know there were some questions about adding what part of this water is permanent recharge. And that was not something that we prepared for today, but if that becomes of more interest, we can do that in the future. It definitely is part of our yearly annual report to the state. So I don't know if there's any questions that anybody has on this chart, but I'll take a pause and see if there are any. Sarah, did you have anything coming in?
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
I appreciate the graph up there. Billy, do you have any, Councilwoman, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
You know, I don't. No, I appreciate the chart. It seems like we're kind of holding pretty stable.
Yeah,
So we're
and you
still
know what?
ahead.
It's nice to know, and I know Leslie didn't want to, for people that might be watching, to understand the restrictions that we have as a community through our agreement with SRP, that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that from December, January, February, and March, those 4 months were not able to pump any water from our reservoirs to recharge unless the Granite Reef Dam is spilling, which it was this past year. Then we were able to pump earlier, which was in March, and they gave us the authorization to do that earlier. So I just want people to know that out there from those times, we have two restrictions. And correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie, it's a self-imposed restriction to our reservoirs that when we hit the conservation level of water in those reservoirs, we quit recharging, as well as our obligation to SRP. Would that be correct?
Yeah, it's a goal line. So if we're seeing that maybe we're not getting the recharge, the precipitation, it's a little bit of holding your breath at the beginning of the monsoon season. Some years we produce, the area produces a good monsoon, and sometimes they don't. So you want to watch for long-term records for that. So the goal is to cease recharge surface water when you're getting close to those conservation pools, and kind of, as I said, kind of holding back a little bit before you send too much in those early months before the monsoon actually hits. So
Okay.
it's an art and a science, surface water supplies, because they are renewable.
So Chairman Blair, Leslie, we're still about half of what we're allowed for pumping, right?
I think our total available is, I think, 16,500.
Okay,
acres.
so we're not even quite half, yeah.
And total year pumped, we're at 6,534.
Right,
So yeah, I think we're way less than half.
yeah. Yeah, okay.
So I
Perfect.
guess it came
Good.
up last month too, and I think it's important that we're comparing things correctly, is that we have pumping, but we also have committed demands. And so
Right.
we have to be really careful about comparing solely our pumping now compared to our upper, the level that we are looking at without Big Chino waters physically moving into the area yet. So on top of your pumping that you see on this chart, there is also commitments and contracts for additional pumping that has not been realized yet.
So, but with
Correct.
those commitments, correct, are we about half, Leslie?
We could be more than that. We don't really have this agendized for our conversation today.
Okay.
But if you solely want to look at what you're pumping versus the 16,000, you can see on the chart that we're not at 16,000 and we're not halfway there. But we also have the reality of contracts that are in place for additional pumping that will be realized in time. And the time frame, of course, will be subject to when there are interests and needs for that water. But we've committed to developments that are underway.
Okay, thank you.
We meaning the city, not me, but just a portion thereof of a worker bee. Were there any other questions that are related to this topic, or would you like to proceed, Chairman?
I think far as, I don't know whether, there's folks out there in Wonderland that Sarah might be able to see. Sarah, is there anybody that would like to speak to the graph?
I do not have any hands raised. Oh, one moment. Russell Pilcher. Mr. Pilcher, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, just real fast, a question I have is the difference between the effluent water recharge for January, March, February. Those months are much greater than the remaining months. Why isn't the recharge amount for effluent water more consistent across the months?
Leslie, do you have, or Craig, do you have some kind of idea what that might be?
The change, did you want to take that, Craig, or would you like me to?
You go ahead, Leslie, it's fine.
Okay. So what we're seeing, Mr. Pilcher, is that when it becomes the summer months, more of the water is being sent out to the contracts that are in place for golf courses. So less is available for recharge.
Maybe the key word there to add then is reuse. So effluent is going to reuse during those hotter months of the year.
Okay, instead of recharge.
Correct.
All right. Anybody else out there, Sarah?
Mr. Pilcher has his hand up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to get unmuted there. I'd like to just briefly as I can, go over a couple of analogies. One is that I get a $500 tax refund. And the first part of that analogy is I take that $500 to one Arizona credit union and deposit it in my checking account, thereby making it immediately available for my withdrawal. The second part of that analogy is I'm driving on the outskirts of town between here and Chino Valley, and I find a stranger on the side of the road. I give that stranger my $500, asking that he deposit it in my one Arizona credit union checking account in downtown Prescott. And in this case, I really won't know when or even if that money will ever be available for my withdrawal. And I'm kind of concerned that when we talk about recharge, we're kind of thinking, many of us are thinking kind of like analogy number one, that I put the recharge in and it's available for withdrawal. When in reality, I think, and I would caution that it might be more like number two, where the recharge, we really don't know if or when that recharge might be available to our aquifer. So that's the comment I'd like to make. Thank you.
Okay. I guess we all could have that concern because we're not an ostrich and we don't have the science to stick our head in the ground to figure out exactly where that recharge goes once it hits our sewage plant and is treated. But one thing we do know, and Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, we do know we're following state guidelines, and we do know that we have 3 wells. I think they're all online now, where 1/3 of our production for the city of water is, I guess you would say, reusable water, rather than pumping it from Chino Valley Aquifer out there. So we're letting those wells, and it's just only my opinion, so we're letting those wells out there rest 1/3 of the time. Would that be somewhat of a right analogy, Craig?
Yes, it is. We have increased our water production in the airport area over the last several years, so that, less water is coming from the Chino town limits, as it did historically, and more is now coming directly from the airport area where we do have our recharge facilities.
Okay, so with that analogy, that $500, about $400 of that just got brought back to the bank, and the other $100 we're going to assume maybe makes it back to Chino Valley. Sorry, I just think it's funny. But anyhow, any other questions?
Nothing else, Chairman.
Okay, let's move on to the focus topic, which is item number C, I believe. Is that correct, Sarah?
It is focus topic, subcommittee hearing review and discussion of forecasted topics for 2021.
Okay, who's going to do this one? Leslie, is that you as well?
Let me unmute myself. Yes, I'd be happy to. So I'll just read the background real quick. And thank you, Sarah, yeah, for heading to the chart there, that first one. So the background on this was in calendar year 2020, a new member was added to the council subcommittee for water issues. A new chairperson was selected, and the group was working under a new water policy that was adopted by council in November 2019. An outline termed the topics forecasted for 2020 was prepared for the subcommittee that included reference to their organizing document. And that's a resolution. It is also recommended the city review or the subcommittee review the topics forecasted for 2020 and provide feedback on updates for its 2021 calendar. So we're just around the corner where we'll be next week looking at what will be on the January 2021 calendar for this group. So with the chairman, we discussed just looking back at what was reviewed this year by the group, understanding you meet once a month. And we had some, interruptions from April through June with the COVID. We usually handle that or a missed meeting through a memo. But where you started, and I won't read through all of these, but there was interest in January related to the Big Chino Water Ranch and the closed loop pump storage project, which has gone quiet. In February, we started seeing water service agreements come in, the applications and the process for how these were going to be handled with this new policy. So if we just take a brief pause there, the city has had 7 water service agreement applications. I believe 1 was voided, so we're at 6. So you heard roughly 6 water service agreement applications this year. Some went directly to council without stopping at the subcommittee first. And I think that was mostly due to the COVID. There was an effort to keep things moving, even if the subcommittee was not meeting. With those, that was one of your items of kind of responsibility. You've also had different DAs, such as Arizona Echo, Deep Well Ranch, other activities related to the allocation of water. We have a kind of bifurcated system a little bit now where there are water service agreement applications, and you're hearing those. But for example, just to recap your year, you also had a Town of Chino Valley IGA that was moved through council that also offered water supplies for that commercial corridor. So a lot of different things are happening. You were seeing mostly the water service agreement applications, and those don't always go to contract anymore. They're just an approval of the application. Moving along, you did Clyde Halstead was able to bring forward water outside of city limits, and then onward through education topics, conservation education topics were looked at this year. You brought forward the interest in having a pumping versus recharge graph. We continued on using that forecasted document to line up topics that we thought were important for you to be aware of, such as the Governor's Water Augmentation and Innovation Council and Conservation Council. We just call it the Governor's Water Group, the long term, as well as the ADWR's efforts for management plans into the next, I don't know, management period. So what are we going to do after 2025? And you can kind of see also that the water service agreement applications were kind of just coming and going. I think that's basically the wrap up for this one. It's documented on this chart. So if you had any questions related to any of these topics, I'm happy to kind of go over those. Or if you want to look towards what we might look like for 2021, we can move ahead.
Councilwoman, Mayor Pro Tem Billy Orr, do you have any comments on the chart? I know she's there somewhere hiding.
Yeah, looks like she muted herself.
Okay, I think it's well done. We have certainly, in my opinion, we're going to have somewhat of an interesting world coming up this year for water resources within the region, whether it be pumping water outside the city of Prescott to a municipality or government organization or to individual developments. You know, I've heard a lot of clamor about how dare we give away the city's water. I somewhat look at it differently and have done a myriad of research on this item myself, and going back into the late 40s and early 50s. People need to understand that most areas, I would say, hesitate, but go ahead and say all areas that are outside the core of the city of Prescott have been in the county at one point in time or the other, and have received water from the city either prior to annexation or with annexation. I believe we are a regional water provider. I believe personally that we need to be able to control our areas around us by using water as a leverage. And I believe that that is what this mission of the subcommittee is also partly about, to recommend to the council. I think it's important to understand that our water is regionally based, but yet Prescott has a very unique scenario of being a water provider in an AMA. Therefore, it gives us a heightened responsibility to make sure we're doing the right things, not only for Prescott in a line in the sand called the city limits, but also new annexations and further growth within the region. So I would suspect, Leslie, and everybody listening, that there's going to be more clamor and more comment about how the city utilizes its water resources, and that how we recharge those and keep some of those in permanent recharge. So I'm looking for a very active 2021 when it comes to water and how we as a city of Prescott manage it. Billy, you have any
And
comments?
Councilman, am I muted or can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I agree with you 100%. I think the city has moved in all the right directions as far as conservation. We can do a better job of conserving if we can control. And, you know, the idea of, you know, we're all coming out of the same aquifer. So the more that we can get people on our system, the better.
Perfect. Any other comments from staff? Any hands up out there, Sarah?
I do not have any at the moment.
Okay. Wow, is that all we have to cover today?
Well, would you like to go over kind of forecasting for next year a little bit? We were wondering
Sure.
if you found the topics that we compiled helpful last year, because that could be our guide for next year as well.
Okay.
Sarah, thanks for having that up on the screen. So we'll skip over the block on the formation of the subcommittee and the duties that are outlined in the resolution, but the next block is the forecasted topics. So there's a water policy. You can see memberships, the governors and ADWR's work groups, selected contracts, regulatory requirements, conservation education, infrastructure topics, and then an other. So we broke them out that way. Those have generally worked for this group, then we'll hold those. If there's anything new that you have thought of that we need to add, you don't have to tell us today. But if there's something that comes down the pipe later, let us know and we'll add it to this. If we look, a little bit into, oh, I'm sorry, Pro Tem Moore, were you jumping in?
I was just going to say, Leslie, Councilman Blair's commission, I think that's something that we should probably, I know that they've started working and have some ideas out there, and I think it would be good to hear something, an update on that
Okay.
pretty regularly.
Thank you, Billy. And yeah, we're working away, and not me. I'm just digesting all the information that we've received from not only Leslie, but Craig and Gwen and Carrie and all the folks at Public Works. By the grace of the city manager's ability to give them a work program to focus time on something that's important to this community, I believe, and Craig can chime in, I believe that we've come a long way from where we've done in the past. We've got some great numbers. And Craig, I don't have that sheet of paper in front of me. Maybe you can just share with Mayor Pro Tem Billy that with the number of septic systems that we have in the county and the city where we serve potable water, that represents how many, number one, how many septic tanks? And if we were to use our ratio of how much water they use, how many acre feet would that mean that we could recharge or save? Do you remember those numbers offhand?
I believe I'm pretty close. And what we talked about in the Water and Sewers Connection Commission was about 3,100 parcels that we're dealing with, and that could equate to, I forget if it was 356 or 365 acre feet. It's one of those two numbers. Okay. We're saying 356, I believe.
I believe that's correct. And 356 acre feet of water that could be recharged or put back in the aquifer for safe yield, and that we're losing right now. If somebody just wrapped their arms around the comments that I made of us being a regional provider and understand that we don't, as a community, want to push people away from doing the right thing to have a centralized sewer and water system, it makes a huge difference. Not only in the fact of recharge, but in the pollution of Watson and Willow Lake because of discharge of E. coli. So this is a passionate thing for me. I know it's an expensive endeavor. We should never, ever allow these things to become abrupt and apparently used more often than us serving water outside the city. Go ahead, Billy.
No, I just wanted, I think that's pretty amazing. And like you say, it's so good for the environment to keep those things from draining on down into our creeks and on into our lakes and water supply.
Right. And again, I have to say, thank you, staff, everybody there, not just one person. It takes a lot of number crunching from the GIS folks all the way down to be able to understand what our issues and problems are. Hopefully we'll work forward in this budget year to be able to take, so to speak, the low-hanging fruit of one of the areas that does not have a centralized sewer and have it engineered and planned for the following year and construction of that. So I look forward to all these things moving forward. And I think it's a big day for Prescott to be able to do that. Go ahead, Dylan. Yes, sir.
Another little piece along that realm associated with the sewer connections, with the effort that we put out on the water conservation side in recent months, we've already seen an uptick to applications being submitted for replacement of toilets, and specifically in the unsewered areas. So our effort reaching out is already starting to show participation and can, reap dividends, towards reduced water use.
Yeah, I think we need to continue on down that path. There's no doubt conservation is a huge part of this, and especially the target group of folks that are on septic systems, for them to get a rebate to change their antiquated washing machines and toilets and shower heads and their turf away from the water getting away from us, I think is a good thing.
So-
Leslie?
Yeah, sure. I think maybe we can start the wrap up real quick. So looking into January, what we are looking at for this group is a water conservation rebate program update. So it'll be the first half of the fiscal year, so
Okay.
through December. There'll be a presentation on that. The water service agreement block on the agenda, I think we'll start filling up a little bit. We are seeing quite a few pack items that seem to fit the over 2 acre foot bill. So we might see something like the exceptional healthcare of Prescott, the specialized healthcare project, North Star at Deep Well Ranch. There's a Roman Stone Products, a construction outfit basically that has the potential for that as well. And I think there was one more, but I don't see it on my list right now. So we might have, a fair amount of water service agreements pending how things go through the holidays. It is just a matter of things don't move as quickly because everybody's doing different things during that time. In February, there's a potential for a DNO modification update where we provide as staff the basics of why the city would go in to modify their DNO, timetables, the process a little bit. It's going to be a quick process, but it's probably a good topic to bring forward early on in 2021. And then if we're looking into March and April, at our last meeting, we discussed that that's typically the time frame that we provide the annual water withdrawal and use report that's filed with the state, the regulatory report. It's not due till March 31st. So if we present it to you in early March, it would only be highly provisional. If we wait until April, then we would have the firm numbers that are being submitted to the state. So that's the lineup, but we have noted the commission, as member Orr has mentioned. We've mentioned that in the past, we might bring that forward. So if it's ready to move forward to this group for an update, then I'm sure it will be added. Otherwise, we'll keep on keeping on as we have with membership updates as have been requested in the past, or anything new that you should be aware of.
Thank you, Leslie, and I appreciate Councilwoman Orr, and that may very well. We'll see what staff has that they want to put on here when it comes to our sewage tank issues that we're working on. But also would like Craig, and I don't want to overwhelm him or staff. Boy, there's the people that have talked about the ongoing drought and what are we going to do about it. Of course, you can't. It's the good Lord that makes the water happen. And certainly we need to be aware that the precipitation levels are different. I guess what I would be interested in knowing, Craig, over the several years, maybe a 15 or 20 year snapshot, the lakes have been way lower than they are right now in the past. Matter of fact, I can remember when those lakes were dried up every single year. I don't think this is the first time we have been negative in our waterfall from nature. Maybe we can find something in your history of tracking yearly waterfalls that would give us some kind of insight.
Okay, we can look into that, and definitely even on our water pumping chart, it's evident this year when you look at August, September, and October, those pumping rates and volumes are not normal, and they're a direct reflection of the lack of the monsoon.
Okay.
So, yeah, we can look into that. We are gathering multiple other ways of looking at numbers as well, so this can just be another piece.
Yeah, I think we all like to applaud the fact of when we have a wet year and we're able to recharge water and do the right thing. I think we need to look at the backside of that as well and understand that there's a time when we don't get the specific amount of water that we might think annually that we should be recharging. And what does that mean in long term for the city, and maybe kind of put some arms around that. So that's something that can be a monthly, or I shouldn't say a monthly topic, but something in months to come to where you guys aren't bogged down, where we can look at maybe past 15, 20 years. So I can look at it and other folks can say, well, there's like 5 years ago, we had a year that was drier than this year. So I'm just trying to put my arms around what does dry mean? And I can't really do that unless I see a graph or something to make sure that I'm speaking, not just off the cuff, but have the factual matter in front of us.
Okay, we got it.
Anything else, Billy?
No, I'm good, Steve. Thank you. Would you
I
like
think
me to make a motion
You
to adjourn?
You go right ahead, and I'll second that. And before we take a vote, I want to tell everybody from staff, thank you.
Yeah, hard to
Okay,
believe it's December, right?
Yeah, that's
Wow.
exactly right. So let's go ahead
Yeah.
and take a vote.
Okay.
A motion and a second was made. All in favor of adjourning? Aye.
Aye.
Everybody have a great
Very
day.
good. Thanks, Steve.
You too.
Thanks, Leslie. Craig. See you later. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.